Hi, Bob Hughes here with JD Squared. Thanks for watching. Hope you're having a great day. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to set up our RC6 rotary cutter. Specifically, we're going to be anchoring it to the floor, aligning the components, and basically getting the physical structure up and running. We're not going to show you in this video how to hook up the electrics. It's very simple, but it really needs to be in its own video to keep this one a little bit more short and concise. Anyway, what you see around me is the RC6 rotary cutter after it has been unloaded off of its pallet. Let's talk about that for a second. When you receive the machine, you're going to need a forklift. These are not hobby machines. They're heavy. I think the weight's around 3,000 pounds shipping weight, so you're probably going to need a forklift. Another thing you're going to need is most likely at least 2 people to help you move the components. Now, while you're moving the components, keep in mind that they could be a little top heavy. You want to be careful. It's not like they're just going to fall over, but you want to be careful. Now, the reason they are that way is while we were designing the machine, we were trying to keep the footprint as narrow as possible so that as you walked around the machine, you didn't trip over legs, things like that, which meant that it got taller but narrower, therefore the tipsy problem. Now, once it's bolted to the ground, of course, that problem goes away. So just keep in mind that you want to be careful handling the machine. You don't want to tip it over. Okay, there's several steps we're going to need to do in order to set the machine up, and I will be showing you how to do them. First, let's go ahead and identify the components so you know what I'm talking about. Every RC6 is going to come with a carriage frame, a 12-foot long carriage frame, and a 12-foot long tube frame. Tube frame has the power head. It does the rotating of the work pieces. The carriage obviously is moving the torch or the router up and down, whatever you happen to have on the machine at the time. These two work in conjunction. The alignment of them is very important. It's very easy to set. I will show you. Now, what I have over here is the optional extension units for the machine. So each of these are also 12 feet long, so it extends the machine out to about 24 feet. They also must be aligned. Once again, relatively easy procedure. You're going to need some basic tools. You're going to need a hammer drill because you're going to want to anchor this thing down into the floor. You're going to need some 1/2-inch lag bolts is what we used. I'll be showing you those right there. A couple large adjustable wrenches and a couple vice grips, and that's pretty much it. Now, I am going to be doing the water leveling process on this machine. I also recommend that you do this on all of our machines, whether it's a flatbed, plasma, wood router, or whatever. Water leveling is the way to go. Do not trust a 6-foot level. There are times when you need them and you could use them. This isn't one of them. All right, so let's go ahead and let me show you the first step. Okay, let's take a look at the legs on the RC6 rotary cutter. They're the same design regardless if it's the tube frame or the carriage frame. On each leg, we have pre-installed 20mm hex bolts on the outermost holes. We're going to use a wrench or a pair of wrenches to adjust the machine. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to place one of them on the bottom of the head of the bolt, and we're not going to let it turn. We're going to hold it in position, and then the nut that's underneath the leg, we are going to rotate clockwise or counterclockwise to tilt the machine. Once we have all that leveled out using our water level and our other torpedo level, we will then lock these bolts down into position. After that is done, we are going to use an anchoring system. What we're using right here is wedge anchors by Redhead. They're 1/2-inch by 5.5 inches long, and they are going to go through the innermost holes. You have plenty of room right here to put a hammer drill and to drill into your concrete. Now, obviously, we have already anchored this particular section of the machine to the floor. I will be showing you that process here in a second of how to level it, but this one has already been anchored down. All right, let's get on with the leveling. Okay, we're at the business end of the RC6 rotary cutter. I put on my reader so I can see what I'm doing. You young people out there, your time is coming. Just wait. All right, first thing we're going to need to do to start the water leveling process is to go get ourselves some tubing. I went to my local hardware store. I picked up 3 10-foot sections of 1/2-inch ID clear vinyl tubing. I also picked up a couple of hose connectors and clamps so I could fasten it all together. Remember, the base machine is 12 feet long, so if you're just water leveling that, you're going to need about 15 feet of tubing, but if you're putting on the optional 12-foot extension, you're going to need about 28 feet of tubing, so keep that in mind. You're also going to need to pick yourself up a funnel. That's why I like the 1/2-inch ID, because a lot of funnels seem to work pretty darn well with that right there. All right, first thing we're going to need to do is obviously attach the tube to the machine. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use a couple of parts that we supply with it. Now, what this device is right here is a locator jig to line up the tube frame with the main carriage frame, and it basically goes on the machine like this right here. However, it has some brackets on the end of it, and that's what we're going to use to fasten our tubing to the frame. And we can set all this aside. So we end up with this right here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie wrap it to this bracket. Now, where you tie wrap it actually matters. You can see how I'm holding the bracket facing towards you. We want to tie wrap it on the right side of this bracket right here. So we're going to put the tie wrap right there. We're going to pull it. Now, do not pull it tight. The idea is we want to be able to slide this tube up or down like that. So you can see where I can slide it up and down. So I want it just tight enough to allow me to slide it, but where it itself will not just pull down due to gravity. All right, let's go ahead. And what you're going to do is we're going to clamp it to this rail right here at the end of the frame, using just a common vice grip. Now I'm leaning the bracket in a little bit because I want the tube as close as I can to it. All right, so we're going to do that right there. Now, this side here, we can move up or down. We can slide it up or down right here. On the other side, we're going to securely fasten it to the second bracket on the second locator, and we're going to use a couple tie straps, and we're going to pull it tight because we don't want that end to move. Now, I'm going to go down there in a minute and show you exactly how to do that also. Okay, so we've got our tube fastened to the machine. Now it's time to go ahead and put water in it. I've already pre-filled water in this one here. Obviously, just put the funnel in and start putting water in it. Now, keep in mind, the idea of this tubing, there's not a whole lot of volume right there. So right here, you can see the water level is sitting right here, right now. So if I was to go ahead and pour water in it and fill this up, it's not going to take much at all. So keep that in mind unless you don't mind your shoes getting wet. All right. Now, it's important that after you've put the water in the tubing, we get the air bubbles out. And I'm not talking about the teeny little air bubbles. I'm talking about sections of a hose that have air pockets in it. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to get one part of your tubing on the ground and the rest of it up. And you're going to keep that's on the ground, and you're going to start lifting the tubing up and walking down your tube, and you'll see the air bubbles just chasing away from you. And then bottom line is, by the time you get to this end, the air bubbles come up. Then we're going to make a final inspection. We're going to look down the entire length of the tubing, make sure we don't have any significant air bubbles. And at that point, we're pretty much ready to go. So let's go down to the other end. I want to show you exactly how to fasten the tube to that side. Okay, we're now at the other end of the carriage frame, the main section. Remember, in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to install the extensions, the optional ones also. And this is what we have to my right here. I have placed the extension at the end of the main carriage frame, a little bit of distance apart so I can get in here and work a little bit. This frame rail right here is what's going to connect the two together. I'll be explaining that to you here in a little bit. Now, what I've done is I've gone ahead, as I mentioned earlier, and I have securely fastened the second bracket off the second locator device to the tubing. And I've got it to where it's pretty darn firm, and I've used 2 tie wraps because remember, I want the tube going straight up and down if I can help it. Makes it a little bit easier to read it. Now, if you notice, I don't know if you can see it. You see the water level bouncing up and down right here? I've gone ahead and pre-filled this with some water, save us a little bit of time. Anyway, the idea is you're going to take this bracket and this tube and you're going to put it in this corner because we are referencing off the top part of the machined carriage frame, the black section. So let's put it right there and we'll just clamp it down. Now, if you look, if you can see it in the video, the water level is down about right here. If I wanted to go ahead and raise that a little bit, I could put a touch more water in it. Now, look how little bit I'm putting in. I mean, a very small amount. Yeah, and I've almost raised it all the way up. That small amount. Just keep in mind that it doesn't take much water to fill the tubing up. All right. So we're looking good on this side right here. Now we're going to do this exact same procedure once I move the extension into position and we fasten it together. We're going to do the exact same thing, but we're going to be doing it on the other end. Now, it is not important that the water level is not to this flat spot right here. Don't try to make it there. Just get it within a ballpark. If you're within 2-3 inches, you're good to go. And I will go down there and show you how to adjust it. All right, back to the other end of the machine. Alrighty, let's go ahead and start leveling this thing. Right now, if you could see it, the water has settled to about right here, the top of the water line. What we're going to do to adjust it is we're going to raise and lower the tubing to get this line even with the machine surface on the RC6. The surface we're using is this black surface right here on the top. Reason we're using it is because we have fully machined the entire carriage frame, so we know that that surface is true. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start, since I'm below my reference point, I'm going to raise the tubing. If I was above the reference point, the water line that is, I would be pushing the tubing down, but in this case we're coming up. Now generally, let's just say the water line is a couple inches below the mark, which it is right now, our reference mark. You're going to pull twice that amount, twice that distance. That's why I like to have the tube vertical, because it just makes it easier to do that. So right now I'm going to pull up about 4 inches and then keep pulling up. I'm a little above it right there. Let's let her settle for a minute. The smoother you do this, the quicker it settles. Okay, right there, I'm pretty much where, nope, let's get up a little bit higher. I want to get up, remember, I want to get between the steel rail and this, that line right there. Okay, right now, okay, I'm at that point right now. I'm looking pretty darn good. I will now go to the other end and I'll check that level. And then we're going to start the process of leveling the machine, and I'm going to show you that now. Okay, for this step here, we're going to level the machine. Let me tell you something real quick. I couldn't finish this video the other night. I had to go watch the Super Bowl. So today's going to be a little bit different. We're going to hear a little bit of background noise. They're in full-blown manufacturing mode back there. I apologize for the background noise. It is what it is. And I've got a different shirt on. Other than that, everything's the same. So let's just keep on going. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this machine has already been bolted to the floor, and I'm going to describe to you how we did that. First thing we have to do is come to this end of the machine right here, and we need to loosen up your front bolt so that you can literally wiggle it with your fingers. What we've effectively done there is we've created a tripod. We have the 2 hex bolts down there contacting the ground and the one in the rear. The reason we loosened up the front one is because the machine, a lot of the weight is towards the rear. Picking the rear leg lets us keep a little bit more in balance. Now, on this end over here, what we did was we took our level, placed it between the rails right here, and leveled the machine this away. Now, once you do that, you can go ahead and run your anchor bolts down on the inside holes and snug the legs down. You don't want to tighten it real tight, you just want to snug them down. Idea is to keep it from rocking. Now, that's easily accomplished because when we designed the machine, we designed the anchor bolts and the leveler legs or leveler bolts in line with each other so that the machine can pivot this way and not really bind up anything. So anyway, what you've got right now is you've got your tripod. We've got it leveled this way. Now we're going to level it this way using the water level. So I'll come down here. I'll take my sighting. Remember, we want the water level with the top right here. I'm a little bit below it, so I'll go ahead using my fingers and I will raise it up. Okay, I'm dead on it right there. And then I'll come down to this side over here and I'll check. And yeah, I'm dead and I thought it because, like I said, we went ahead and bolted this one down. Once we have that level, we can then go ahead and run this bolt down. Now, we don't want to use a wrench and start wailing on this thing because then we could put a twist in it. We just want to take the play out. Once we've done that, take your hammer drill, go ahead, drill your holes out, put your anchor bolts in, lock the machine down. Once it's locked down, come back, double check it. Make sure everything is level. Make sure you don't have to tweak anything. And that's it. So we've got the main carriage part of the frame leveled down. Let's move on to adding an extension to it. Okay, I've gone ahead and slid the extension up against the main carriage frame right here. First thing you're going to need to do is relocate the water level from the end of the main carriage frame. You're going to put it on the end of the extension here using your vice grip, just like we did on the other side there. I've got this torpedo level here that I could place right here. You're really not going to need it. You'll see why in a minute, but I put it there anyway. What you need to do is go ahead, use the outer bolts right here and your water level and level the machine up so that the far end is level with this end here. Now, let's go ahead and connect the two halves together. Before I connect the extension to the main carriage frame, let me show you a little trick here to help you align the extension up and down this way with the main carriage frame. If we were to push the frame away, you could see where I've just misaligned it right there. By pulling the frame to you, in order to get it straight, essentially like I've done right here, pull it to where this is even with each other. Looks like I got to go a hair more. Just use your fingers to feel it. I'm literally just pushing on the frame. Okay, that feels really, really good right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the extension towards the main carriage, make sure that there's no play. Anyway, this is a great way to square the machine up. To connect the two halves together, we're going to use this block we've provided, and we're also going to use the rail. Between the two, they're going to level out both the extension and the main frame right here. First thing we're going to need to do is, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to double check, make sure our rail strip here are aligned with each other. We've pre-leveled the end. Let's go ahead and install the connector block. You're going to use 3 countersink bolts. I'm going to go ahead and install them real quick. Now I'm going to take my impact right here. I've placed a 8mm hex socket on the end of it. We supply 12mm serrated flange bolts, which means they're going to lock themselves in. You're not going to have to get up under there with a socket. They'll grab themselves. Let's go ahead and install those 3. All right, notice I didn't really zing the impact wrench very hard. I just basically taken the play out. All righty, we'll do that. All righty. None of the bolts in the rail are in. Everything can float. Now, what we want to do is look at the groove on the outer rod, and we want to line it up this way. We CNC machine this entire frame and extension, top, groove, and the ends. So let's put on our glasses here. And what I'm looking to do, and I can slide the frame left or right a little bit, no problem. I'm looking to line up the inside groove edge and basically line up the rods. Now, remember I mentioned that we wanted this side of the extension lower than this side to go ahead and install it, and there is a step right here. This is definitely lower than this side. As I tighten up the connector block, it will pull everything together. So let's go ahead and install our other 3 countersunk bolts. Now this time I'm going to start with the middle bolt, and as I bring it up, it's already starting to raise the extension a little bit, even that little bit of force. Let's go ahead. All righty, let's get this one in. All right, now I'm kind of like taking a last look. Wow, that looks really good. If you run your fingers up and down the rod, you could feel it, if it's aligned. Now I'm going to go ahead and snug them up. I'll start by tightening down the 3 on the carriage side. The extension is still down a little bit because we haven't tightened these up. One last final check. Let's go ahead and tighten them up. All right. Okay. Now we're going to take a look here. Oh yes, that feels really, really nice. There's very slight little bit of space between the two rods. You don't have to have it perfect. If I had to guess, I would say that's 5-6 thousandths clearance right there. Not a problem. Everything looks good. Now what we can do is go ahead and take our button head bolts and go ahead and tighten them down. All right. Now they will also act as a connector to pull and align the frame. I take a look down there where the two rails are coming together. They look like to me they're perfectly aligned, so I can go on putting in the button heads. You're probably wondering, why did I use button heads? The reason is cleanly. When you're cleaning the machine, it's easy to wipe a rag over a button head, a little bit easier than a hex head. We try to think of everything here if we can. All right, let me go ahead and install the rest of these button head bolts, and then we'll go to the other end and we'll do the final leveling of the extension itself. Okay, the first thing we're going to need to do is level the extension with the main frame. So we have our water hose hooked to the other end, and we've attached it right here, and using our wrenches, we're going to need 2 of them, one on the bottom down here, and then we're going to use the other one on the nut just below the bracket right here. We're going to hold the head of the bolt steady, and we're going to adjust this one that way up or down. Now, what we want to do is go ahead and put our torpedo level right here between the frames and kind of level it up between the two, and at the same time, we want to raise it up or down so that our water level is at the correct reference mark on both ends. Once you've done that, we're going to go ahead and lock down the top bolt up here, lock it down. Now when you do that, hold on to the nut beneath it. You don't want it spinning, then lock them down. That's all there is on this end. Let's go connect the two halves together. Let's go ahead and fasten this end of the machine down. You're going to need a few tools. Of course, you're going to need a hammer drill with a concrete drill. This is a 1/2-inch drill bit. You can see where we've allowed you plenty of room to get the drill in there, so you won't have any kind of clearance problems at all right there. Let me just set this down right here. I am using, for this particular job, 1/2-inch wedge anchors right here, 5.5 inches long. 6 inches long works pretty good also. If you're in a metric country, 12 millimeter works perfectly fine. Anyway, first thing we do before we drill these holes, we want to kind of like look everything over. Look at our connections on a rail. Are they straight? Does everything look good? Another thing you're going to want to probably do is take your torpedo level, put it between the frames right here, and then kind of take a look at it. And we're looking pretty darn good right here. As soon as we tightened up those connectors, that kind of squared the frame up. But you want to double check it, make sure that it looks pretty level. I've got a section of gear out of the machine. This gear goes right here. I'll be showing you how to install that in a minute. It's out of the machine. That's why I could put the torpedo level here. If I had the gear in it, I wouldn't be able to do it. So to get that out, you're just going to loosen up these 2 clamp bolts here and remove it. All right, so we've already looked at the torpedo level. We're good. We're going to make one last check. Yep, we're looking really good right here on the water level. So basically, it's time to go ahead, take our hammer drill, and knock our holes out. Give me a second. I'll be right back after I've done that. Okay, I drilled my holes. I've installed the front anchor. Let me tell you something about anchors real quick. Make sure you put the washer and the nut on before you hammer it into the ground. Even though it's got a turned down area right here, which is supposed to prevent the threads from getting messed up, they can still get damaged a little bit if you're a little crazy with your hammer. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead. I'm hiding behind the machine now. I'm going to install it. I'm hammering it down. Alrighty, got it driven all the way down. I got the nut at the top of the anchor. Now all I got to do, take my trusty impact here. That's that one. That's that one. Let's go ahead and do a final check. Okay, it looks perfect right here. Everything looks really, really good. You can tell she's really in the ground good right now. And believe me, when this bad boy starts firing up and moving quick, you're going to want it bolted to the ground. Alrighty, let's go ahead and put the gear rack in next. With every machine, we are going to supply a short section of gear rack. We're going to use this section to join the longer sections of gear rack on the machine. The idea being is that we're going to vice grip this section, half of it to one gear rack, half of it to the other gear rack. That will mesh the teeth together, aligning them, so to speak. And then we're going to, of course, vice grip that down, and that's how we're going to do it. Now, let me show you something that we do to the gear racks in the machine, but we don't do to this little section right here. We need to grind the sides down all the way to the root of the tooth, the bottom of the tooth. We don't want to grind into the tooth, we want to just grind to the tooth. We do this so that there's no interference. When we mesh the other two gears together, there won't be any possibility that this section of the gear would contact the other section, not allowing the teeth to mesh. Now what that'll mean, or what that means, is that between the two gear racks on the machine, there's going to be an air gap. Perfectly fine, no problem. If you actually look at a tooth profile, you'll see a flat at the bottom of the tooth. We just have basically ground that away. So this is how we're going to go ahead and align those gear racks right now. Okay, I'm holding in my hands right here the third section of gear rack. The machine will come with one gear rack already installed on the main 12-foot section of the carriage frame. If you purchase the extension, you're going to need to install the second and third sections. Now, what I'm getting ready to show you how to join the two sections together on the end of the machine is the exact same procedure you're going to use at the middle of the machine. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take that little section of gear rack that I showed you earlier, and we're going to take our third section here, and we're going to go ahead and install it on the frame. Now, I don't think I need to say it, but we've already done this procedure between the first and second section of gear rack. All right, so now we're going to take this section here, and we're going to use our vice grips, and we're going to clamp them together. So essentially, I've got this right here, okay? So let's slide it in there, clamp it together. Now we're going to grab the other vice grip, do the exact same thing. Okay. All righty. Now our gears have been aligned this way because the teeth in our little section is aligning the teeth in the other two sections. All we have to do now is take a 15mm socket, go ahead, pull the rack back towards you a little bit, take the play out, tighten down those screws right there. I didn't use button heads on those because we need the flange on a flange bolt in order to spread the load out over the clamp to make a clamp a little more secure. Anyway, go ahead now. We could take off our clamps here. And we have a nicely aligned gear rack ready to go. That pretty much finishes up the anchoring and the installation of the main frame of the RC6 Rotary cutter. The next step is to put in the tube frames, and then after that we're going to wire this thing and it's going to be up and running. Let's go get after the tube frames now. Okay, to anchor the tube frames down, first thing you're going to want to do is place the little locator plates on the extreme ends of the tube frame. So we have one down here, right here, very near the end. We have this one down here as close as we can get it to the chuck. You're also going to need a few tools. You're going to need your hammer drill. Make sure the drill is about as long as your anchor bolts. I had to go out and purchase this 6-inch drill because the other one I was using was a 12-inch drill, and it wouldn't get up under the frame here. But this one here, you can see, easily gets up in there. So grab that. You're going to need your 2 wrenches to adjust the legs. Obviously, you are going to need 4 anchor bolts per section. If you got a 12-foot machine, you only need 4. If you got the extension, you're going to need another 4. You're going to need a torpedo level right here to help you level it out. And then you're also going to be using the provided, what would you call them, a gauge block or something? All it is 1/2 by 2 inch cold rolled steel. And we're going to use that to slide up underneath here to set the height and the location of the tube frame. Now, let me go ahead and reposition the camera so you can see a little closer view of what I'm talking about right there, and then we'll continue on. Okay, to align the tube frame in relation to the carriage frame, we're going to use these special fixtures that we provide for you. They have a notch on this end right here and a flat on this side. I've got one installed in the machine here. We're going to put the notch, is going to run on the rail itself. The flat part, this part back here, will rest flat on the flat strip on the back of the machine. Now, when you install it, you remember these brackets, these are the ones that I took off of these in order to use in the water leveler. So we just put them back. Now the way you're going to want to put them back is you're going to want to put the 8mm bolts back in it, and you're going to want to press this flat on the flat stock and then tighten the bolts down and vice grip it to it. It's very important that the rear face of this locator, jig, whatever, is on that flat surface right there, and the round groove is sitting right on the rod, which it is. Now we're going to use 2 of these to align the machine. We'll have one on the far end of the tube frame, one on this end right here. Here's the idea. If you look at the jig, you can see where it says 0.5. Let me see if I get that where you can see it better. It says 0.5 right there. That means we need 1/2 inch. So we provide just nothing more than a piece of 1/2 inch cold roll strip steel, and you're going to adjust the tube frame up and down on both sides until you can, there's no play between this and the jig. Now, the way we're going to align it in and out from the frame is we're going to just put the little jig on the side of the rails, and we're going to move the rail in and out until it aligns with the outer side of it. Either side, the inner or the outer, but obviously the outer is easier to get to. That's how we're going to do it. Now, the next thing we need to do is go ahead and locate the tube frame along the machine in the correct position. Let me show you that now. Now what we have to do is we have to align the tube frame this way with the frame so that we get maximum torque travel. Now, if you look at the machine, we have the round tube stabilizer installed in the machine. It can be installed in 3 different positions. So what we have done in order to allow you to put more tooling in the machine, a little more versatility, is the stop mechanism on the machine is completely adjustable. So if, for instance, we were to put this in the machine in the rear position, which would put it back about here, we clearly can't have a fixed home position or the machine is going to crash. So we have this system right here to where we can adjust this in and out. It's got the rubber stopper and the limit switch trigger right here. We can adjust it in and out. What we're going to do is we're going to place the bolt hole right here through the number 3 spot on the machine right there. That's going to allow us to bring the machine all the way back where the rollers don't fall off the rails, you know. Now, one thing we're going to need to do, let's go ahead and remove the universal jig plate. Give you an idea real quick what this particular piece is right here. This is what we call the universal jig plate, and we have blocks that bolt to it. And this is the plate that in the chuck will allow you to grab angle iron, channel, all that other stuff. So we're really happy with this. Look for videos of us doing all kinds of cutting using the universal jig plate. In the meantime, we're just going to set it down. All right, what we care about is when the machine doesn't have any tooling in it, for instance, there's no tube stabilizer in it or anything like that, we want this torch to go all the way to where it just barely clears the chuck, you know? So it turns out that what we need to do is we need to slide it forward. It's really not that bad to do it. You see me moving it? Okay. So I've slid it forward until from, shoot, let me back it up here, show you again. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put the nose of the chuck 6 inches in front of the frame right here. So it's gonna be up here about 6 inches. So let's go ahead and move it up. Now if you're gonna eyeball this, eyeball it on the big side. You know what? Something just occurred to me. We could just pull this back, go to 6 inches, and just line this up with the edge right there. Let's try that. Okay, I'm about right there. Now what I'm doing is I'm looking down that rail at that locator jig that we put on the machine, and I'm just gonna move her left and right a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good right there. Let's go ahead, take a rough measurement. When in doubt, go farther, you know? Yeah, you're gonna lose a little bit of travel, but if you're a half, quarter of an inch, who really cares about that? Anyway, this is roughly where we want the tube frame. Now we can go ahead and move this out of the way. Let's just, she's catching because, it's servo drives, the gear deal and everything. All right, we'll stop. Oh, I'm hitting up against the jig locator. That's why it stopped. Okay, this is where we're gonna level the machine. All right, let's do it. Okay, the procedure that I'm going to describe to you is very straightforward, very simple. First thing we're going to want to do is pretty much bring the tube frame up to the locator plates right here so that we could just about slide this 1/2 inch co-rolled spacer underneath it. That's the idea, is we want to adjust this frame so that this thing barely slides up underneath it. We're going to go ahead and use our torpedo level, and we're going to level both sides. Now what I've done is the same thing I did on the carriage frame. I ran down the 2 hex bolts I've got here. I'm using that to level the machine. On the other end, I've only have 1 bolt down. The other's completely loosey-goosey. And once again, I've created a tripod. It makes it a lot easier to level the machine doing that. It doesn't matter which bolt on the other end that you loosen and use as a tripod. I use the outside one because it's easy for me to get to. It doesn't matter because the tube frame assembly is pretty much symmetrical. It's pretty balanced. You don't have to worry about it tipping over because you got a lot of weight, behind the machine. So that's pretty easy to do right there. Once again, you're going to use your 2 wrenches. You're going to adjust everything level. Now, the whole idea of this, kind of like what I mentioned, is that it's got the 1/2 inch engraved into or cut out into the plate. We want this to slide under there with minimal clearance. I mean, you just want it just to barely slide under there. Now, to locate the frame in and out, how far away it is from the carriage frame, we're going to use the same block. We're going to put it on the outside of the rail and slide it down and then kind of look at it and say, okay, am I even with this? This jig plate right here, a locator plate, has been made to match this frame rail. So the width of this section right here is 2 inches, the same as the frame rail. So you're going to do this on both ends. You're going to adjust it up or down, level it until this looks good on the outside edge, this slides under it. It's literally that simple. Once you get it adjusted, then we're going to go ahead and anchor it to the floor. So let me go ahead and start adjusting this thing. Okay, that was pretty painless. I hope I didn't do anything that you can't unsee, little butt crack or something like that. Got my fingers crossed. Anyway, as you could see, wasn't very difficult to do. I've triple checked alignment on everything, get everything as straight as I can get it. Now, let's talk about accuracy for a minute. I think I've got this thing within probably, feeler gauge, 5/10 thousandths of an inch off that gauge. That's pretty darn good. That doesn't mean the gauge is a precision machine surface, but 5 or 10 thou eyeball good, you're good enough. You don't have to worry about it being dead nuts on. I mean, if she's off 10 or 15 thou, it's not a big deal if you can see a little bit of air. And the reason for that is you're lining both tube frames up, the extension and the main tube frame, with the frame, and you're using the locators at 2 different points. So if she's off a little bit, let's just say the alignment of the main carriage frame isn't exactly perfect, it's off a 1/16 of an inch at the end, it won't matter because the tube frame has gone with it. The reason you want it pretty straight, and you'll see this in other videos when we're demoing the machine, is we have tooling that bolts onto these frame rails. You're going to want it pretty much in a straight line. Doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, imagine if you have a 20-foot piece of tubing in it and one of the roller supporters is off 15, 20 thou. Zero problems with that at all. Anyway, another thing you may have noticed, I've only put down the front anchors. If you're not forklift loading material into the machine, that's probably good enough. I am going to come back in a little while and I'm going to go ahead and drill the anchors on the rear back there. It's a little cumbersome. I do have to get up under the machine. It is what it is. And I'm going to put them in because we are going to be loading 8-inch pipe in this particular machine, and we're going to be using a forklift to load it. All right, now all I have to do is go to the other end of the machine, install the tube frame extension, and we're finished. We've got the machine bolted down, and we'll be ready to move on to the next step. So let's go down there, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. I've got the 12-foot extension in place. I've pushed it up against the other extension so that the two trays are bumping against each other. Do not line them up this way. It won't work. There's play. Obviously, we have clearance around the sheet metal parts, so the way those trays are bolted on, there might be a slight variation between them. Right now, I've got about a 1/16 of an inch, difference. The idea is don't use the trays to line it up. We're going to be using the tube frame locator plates. I have placed one at the extreme end of this side, and then of course the other one at the extreme end of the other. The idea is exactly the same as it was before. We're going to go ahead, we're going to tweak it in using our spacers and our level. Once we get it right, we'll go ahead and anchor it in, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, I did it. I got it finished. Everything's anchored to the floor. I went ahead and put the rear anchor bolts on the legs right there. It's just me, I couldn't do it. I really wanted this thing bolted down really good. This thing's a beast. It has a lot of cutting forces, G-forces when it's reversing direction, and you really, really want it secured to the floor as good as you can. So that's why I went ahead and did that. Now, I also double checked everything. After I got it all done, I whipped out all my gauges, I put them back on, I made sure everything was just the way we want it. I guess I'm probably within 10 or 15 thou, according to the gauges, down the length of the machine. I'm holding in my hand a leg cover. We're going to go ahead and install this right here, right there. I went ahead and I put them on the machine because I don't want my machine looking bad in the field, and you're going to accumulate debris in there if we didn't cover it, so that's why the covers are there. Another thing real quick to point out, when you put your tube frames in, you will have a gap here between the rails. Don't worry about it. This is not a running surface. This is where we will be bolting all of the tooling that comes with your machine. You don't see it in this video. That's the subject of another video, but there's quite a bit of tooling that comes with the machine. That way you can handle, up to 8-inch pipe, all kinds of sizes from 3/4 up to 8-inch pipe, round, rectangle, square, even flats to where you're not even rotating. All that will come with your machine, and that's a subject of another video. Anyway, it's looking pretty darn good. We still obviously have to hook up the electric and all before we can operate the machine. That is a subject of another video. I do notice that I don't have the rear wire covers on. I'll have to put that on, and a couple other things. Anyway, overall, I would say it probably took, you know, if I had to say go, and I had all my tools here ready to go, about 2 hours, I think I could install the entire machine right there. I like it. Oh, one other thing you may notice, I've gone ahead and I put in the stainless steel splash guards. We chose stainless steel for a couple reasons. One, we know it's going to get scratched up in the future. It's going to get dirty. Stainless steel will help keep your machine looking nice. And the other reason is I don't want my machine looking bad in the field. So we figured we'd go ahead and spend the extra money and go stainless. Stainless steel covers will come with your machine. You'll have them when you put it together for the entire length of the machine, front and rear, so you could see a front one in there. They're designed to be quickly removable because, as I said, this is one powerful machine. So if you're going to be loading up large stuff, let's say 8-inch pipe, 6-inch pipe, odds are you're going to be using a forklift, and you want to be able to get those things out of the way and be able to load it. And we will show you in future videos of us actually forklift loading this stuff into the machine. Anyway, I'm extremely happy the way it's set up right now, and I just want to thank you very much for watching the video and supporting JD Squared. And if you got any questions, of course, we're always here for you. Anyway, thank you again. Have a great day. Goodbye.